Hello and welcome to Raising Vibrations. You're with Simon today. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the full moon in Pisces. This is for the 2nd and 3rd of August 2020. So I hope everybody is okay at the moment, and that whatever it is that you are currently processing in your reality, you understand that you are whole. You understand that you have the capacity to recognize your own empowerment, and when you need help, you can seek it. You have the ability to ask for and extend out to somebody to process your own material in a responsible and adult-like way. So today's video is going to be one that's going to come from a very, very personal place within my own life. Mainly because I feel like this is the work that the soul on myself has come to not only witness in itself, but to simultaneously actually witness it as the collective goes through it. So it's been a really interesting experience of playing around with as above, so below, yin yang, so dynamic of my internal reality, in a sense, kind of matching with the external reality in the most part. So it's going to be a pretty intense video, and hopefully we will survive by the end of this conversation. It is a moon in Pisces. The sun is in Virgo. Mercury is in Virgo. So expect for us to really sit with what I'm sharing with and notice disillusionment. Notice disillusionment within yourself, within the collective, and hopefully that disillusionment, the water splashed onto our face, gives us a very sober outlook on our emotional and psychological dynamics and the way that we see that manifesting itself, or lack of manifesting itself, in the open. So I've got a couple of notes that I've taken down for this video that we'll jump into. As always, I do encourage you to find a space to digest this material where you can fully feel the experience, you can fully contemplate what it is that I'm sharing, and really pay attention to what your own thoughts are saying, what your own psychological and emotional makeup is reflecting to you as your interface with this video. Okay. I'm actually pretty excited, to be honest, to be showing you this imagery over here. So I went onto SolarFire and I was like, how can I get loads of information on the site for everybody, so you can feel like, instead of just listening to my voice, you can have a visualization of what planets are making aspects to, all of that type of stuff. So I came across this and I was like, yeah, I think this would be a really cool way to give everybody some information about how you can interpret the chart. Like, for instance, there's a conjunction. If you look at the top right-hand corner of the video, I'm got my little marker and there's a conjunction symbol. There's the conjunction over there. And let's see if we can find any aspects that are in conjunction, right? Well, conjunction is 0-degree angles, or at least within an orb. So we could see that Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter are in a conjunction. Similarly, if we want to look at, say, a trine, for instance, we can identify, this is if you're learning astrology, 120-degree angle. When I'm saying, oh, it's making a 120-degree angle, well, now a trine is 120 degrees. And you can see by this imagery here that the sun is in Virgo at 10 degrees, and it is making a trine to Uranus at 10 degrees on this full moon. So now that we have the kind of imagery over there, you can kind of pause the screen if you want to, or as you're listening to me communicate. you can kind of take a look at the chart and say, oh, okay, that's what that looks like. That's what a square looks like. So I thought that would be pretty fun. And I think it helps me too as well, because I can kind of illustrate for you on the screen something like, let's have a look at the sun. If you want to read this diagram, the way that it works is that you take the moon and you say the moon in relationship to Mercury. No, there isn't any aspect. So as you can see, the box is empty. Yeah. But if we say the moon in relationship to the sun, well, that's an opposition indicated by the two circles in the line. Opposition. Does that make sense? Okay. So now that we have the astrology and aspects, same thing here. We go to, let's go to Mars. Mars is in a square to Venus, as you can see, right? Square aspect to Venus. So that's another cool piece of information. We've got a couple of planets in fire elements, nothing in air, lots of earth and water. So we can kind of ascertain from this chart that there is a mixture of water and earth. Now, speaking in terms of elements, if you see lots of water and you see lots of earth, you can assume in a very safe way that this is about emotional growth, right? Because you see a plant that anchors itself into earth needs water to grow, and a plant reflects growth. Yeah. So this chart, from my point of view, relative to just looking at this little piece of information here, speaks to emotional water, growth, earth, stability, anchoring in, slowing down, coming into the body and feeling emotionally. So this is all valuable information, because when I get into the actual imagery of this, what I see with this chart and my own personal message that we can all take away from it, you'll see that earth and water are very important in the way that we internalize the potential, the evolutionary potential of this energy. Okay, so let's look at the astrology first, and then we get to the fun stuff, although astrology is fun, don't get me wrong, but we get to the fun stuff of what does it actually mean. Okay, so first things first, we know that this is a full moon. There's the moon in Pisces at 10 degrees, and it's in opposition to the Virgo archetype, the sun. So there's the opposition. If you notice as well, it's just the sun, well, the sun is making a trine to Uranus in Earth. So there's an Earth, and the moon is making a sextile, which is that little line over there, right, to Uranus as well. So the moon and the sun and Uranus are in full contact with each other. And the way I would interpret that is just what is influenced with this new moon or this full moon energy is a Uranian component, which is, expect some disruption, expect moments of blockage that will lead to a need to change your perspective or an invitation to change your perspective, and then a sudden awakening or an insight that when you emotionally, moon, digest, becomes a healing experience, sun sign in Virgo. So this trine between the sun and Uranus indicates a sudden flash of insight that leads to a shift in perspective. And then when you emotionally anchor that into yourself, which is the realization, and then you act in that way according to that insight, so you bring the insight into your body, then it becomes a component not only around changing your behavior and your routine and your moment-to-moment reality, but it also cleans, purifies, something that was within your life that may have been causing you distress. So you'll know when you watch other YouTube videos of astrologers, they'll talk about Virgo as being, cleaning up, and, Pisces as the archetype of confusion, and all of these wonderful words. And although that is important to understand so that we can identify the archetype, how you actually embody that experience comes down to you internalizing the actual experience that you have in your life around those energies, and how you purify an aspect of yourself that would be needing an adjustment or needing a change in some direction, which I'll get into when I actually talk about what my interpretation of this chart is about. So as you can see, Sun, Moon, opposition, moons of Pisces, sextiling the Taurus archetype. And for those, when we get to the actual message, the 12th house and the second house is, or Pisces and Taurus, those archetypes, when we translate them into the human experience, is where we internalize our sense of relationship to the cosmos, okay? Where we internalize, Taurus, our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to the cosmos, Pisces, the infinite, the all amazing, almighty, image of amazing godness, god, goddess, whatever we put in as an idol. So that sextile's there. So you can see the moon and Uranus are actually connected together in that sextile. And so we are going to be experiencing, and that's why I said hopefully we survive this video in terms of disillusionment, the sun energy is going to be asking us to become a little bit more, clearer on our own idealizations, where we have manifested or created fantasies that we attach to, and I'll get onto why we attach to it, why we attach ourselves to, and then in that fantasy world, we are protected from the big, bad, ugly, unforgiving world that is life. I'm sure many of us have had experiences in our lives where we have felt like life has been unfair to us. And so we develop a coping mechanism to protect ourselves from the, horrible, insensitive way that life can not consider our feelings in that way. And it happens to all of us. It's ultimately how we actually find ourselves, especially when we haven't been able to heal from those experiences or process from big shocks. We get stuck in that state. And when we get stuck in that state, we are regressing into a childlike infantile state. So that's what, again, the disillusionment will be and how we can actually heal ourselves. So that aspect there is pretty prominent. The Venus sitting at 25 degrees Cancer is squaring Mars at 27. So in evolutionary astrology, we identify this square firstly as a crisis in action, or a doing square. And if we go over to the cool little grid that we've got here, you can see Venus there, and it is in a square indicated by the square. And you'll see there it says 2AS, or 2A and then 06, pardon me, I don't know where I got S from. So 2A and then 06. So if you notice, the aspect here that we're dealing with is, firstly, Mars is a slower moving planet around the solar system than Venus. So in evolutionary astrology, we look at the phasal relationship between the two, and we can see here that Venus it would have made a conjunction with Mars, and then it's moved all the way up to the square, but it's not exactly 90 degrees, because the 90-degree square is exactly that. So it's not exactly 90 degrees. It's actually 2 degrees off 90, which makes it 88. And so that's 89. And so when you see the 2A, it says 2-degree applying, meaning Venus is 2 degrees off towards the 90-degree aspect. And so that is why you see an A there. It's applying, A for applying. And you'll notice in another square that I'll talk about, hopefully we can see, yes, Mars and Saturn. Let's go Mars and Saturn. You can see there's an S in that square. And now instead of it being an A, it's an S. And so 27 and 25, now technically that should actually say 2. I'm not entirely sure what Solarfly is getting on with this process here, but it's 2. So the S means separating, meaning that if you notice, Saturn is at 25, the Mars is at 27, so it's already past the 90-degree square, and so now it is separating from the square. Whereas in this case, Venus is applying to the square, okay? Now, that's just kind of, logical process there. What does that mean in terms of evolutionary intention? Venus and Mars in that square, Cancer, Aries, creates the experience of us needing to, it's the separation from the womb, all right? So Aries wants complete freedom, Cancer wants security, and so when the baby comes out the womb, the baby has no reference point other than what it has been experiencing prior to this moment. So its natural function is to return to the womb, but it can't, and so it goes to the breasts, right? This is the natural function of nature returning back to the womb, right? So we have this function of separating and then returning back to the womb, biological process. And when we see that in our human, like our adult state, it looks like us going out into the world, into the big bad world, and dealing with things there, and then coming back to our home. And then we nurture ourselves in our home, Cancer, right? So there's this dynamic tension that's occurring between Mars and Venus, and this is about the separation from the womb. All right, separation from the womb. This is what we're all doing at this point in time, well, attempting to. And so we are in a state of separating from the community. We're separating from the safety. Now, Saturn and Mars are having a conversation together, and what they're doing is they're going, well, in order to separate from the womb, you need to feel that you have resilience. You need to feel that you have protection. You have boundaries. You have the ability to fend for yourself. Now, a child at the age of 7, for instance, or 6, depending on the situation, but it is unlikely, relies on the parent, because the parent is the source of security, Cancer. The parent is also the source of what is protection from the big bad world, because from the child's perspective, it has no sense of orientation other than what it's been exposed to. Okay? So there's this dynamic tension that's taking place between Saturn, Mars, Mars, Venus, and then of course we have the opposition, okay, between Venus and Saturn, an exact opposition. And this opposition between Cancer and Saturn is saying to us, okay, well, how do you establish security in yourself? Right, that's the question to Saturn, or Saturn's asking Venus. It's like, what are you doing down over there? You know, good old Venus. What types of values do you have that give you a sense of being able to protect yourself from the big bad world? Right, and Venus is like, well, I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'm feeling pretty insecure here. Maybe you can help me out with that. And so what happens is this aspect between Mars and Saturn and Venus is pointing to our need to look at what are our values and how do those values serve and support our ability to feel that we can step out into the world, step out into our lives, and live in accordance and alignment with that truth, with that action, with that behavior. And how can we feel secure emotionally within ourselves to say, this is what is real for me. This is what's the truth for me. And this is what I'm prepared to align myself with and, in a sense, become a parent to. How do I parent my own emotional needs? Okay. And so this aspect between Saturn, Venus, and Mars is in the backdrop, pushing us to consistently, over and over and over, work through any emotional or displaced emotions that we have around in our insecurities. Okay. And it's asking us, it's like, well, you know, where do you feel that you trade your security or for your authenticity for security? Where do you choose fear and not knowing how to protect yourself? Where have you not been parented? Where have you developed a protection mechanism or a coping mechanism or a behavior pattern that is rooted in an insecurity that was created in an earlier adolescent part of yourself? Okay, so where did you not have the freedom to move away from the womb that now you are emotionally stuck in? And how is that preventing you from stepping into your dreams, into your fantasies, into your illusions, and following that path, following that path of making your dreams real? Right. So that would be kind of the question. And that's the kind of prerequisite for Jupiter and Saturn into Aquarius. And I've said it in different ways, but I'm saying it to you now. If you want to understand fully what Jupiter Saturn is going to move through Aquarius, you need to do the work from this point up until when Saturn goes direct in or goes into Aquarius, and that is the ability to not trade your authenticity for security. So if the governments, and they will, come out and say, these are the laws, abide by them, do as you say, and you go, no, that's not correct, you'll say to yourself, okay, well, I better learn farming then. It is becoming so secure in yourself that you are able to actually you are able to actually navigate in this world that we are currently living in right now from your own authority. Because when those planets go into Aquarius, what is going to occur is a divide between people who are still needing the support structures of the past, Pluto through Capricorn, to keep them safe, and those that recognize that the support structures are outdated, they're outmodeled, they no longer serve the process anymore, and in order to jump ship, as it were, and to swim to the next safety, as it were, you need to trust yourself. So one cool thing, actually I'll save that for the musings after this. So that's this aspect over here, okay? And this is going to feel like, because now you see Mercury, let's jump onto Mercury. Mercury in opposition to Neptune. Mercury is squaring the nodes, right? Can you see the squares to the nodes there? 24 degrees, and the nodes are sitting at 26 degrees. So those are squares. Now, in this case, it's a little bit tricky. Is Mercury applying to the nodes or separating, right? It's applying. And the reason why it's applying is because, in actual fact, Mercury goes like this, 25, 26, and the nodes move backwards, and they're going 24, 20, 25. So the nodes actually go backwards. It has a different mechanism or mechanic. Say, for instance, when Mars and Venus was applying to the exact square. Now Mercury is coming into the square as well, same, applying. That will be 25. But once Mercury hits 27 and the nodes are 26, then Mercury will be separating. Yeah. And it will just mean that when it is exact square, the intensity, the crisis point will occur. Everything leading up to the square, as in applying, will feel like a pressure, and then a release, and then an action. The action is when the planet is separating, or planets are separating. Okay. All right. So in this scenario with Mercury squaring the nodes, what you're going to see is a duality. And the duality that you're going to see is people who are basically, how did I write it in the Instagram post? By the way, I encourage you to go and check out the Instagram post as well, because there's a written form there. We introduced some human design there as well. So for those of you that don't know of our Instagram page, I'll put the link in the description, as well as the comments as well there, and you can go and read about this astrology update too, shorter version. What I was saying was that what you'll see with this Mercury square the nodes is information that is reinforcing the old structure relative to fear. Here's what you should do. And then information saying, no, we want to liberate. We want to break out. We want to change the pattern. And you'll see a divide that will take place between, again, the assimilation into the system relative to holding on to the sinking ship, or letting go of the sinking ship and jumping into your own rescue boat and ultimately following where the current takes us, which is unfortunately what is really going to happen. And the more that we accept that reality, the more you are in a space, ironically and paradoxically, able to take your own autonomy and your own authority and your own truth and validate that over the systems that are going to reinforce and restructure and re-establish even firmer levels of control. Okay, even more constriction. That's what's going to happen. So it's either I want constriction and I want to live in that constriction and have all of my liberties taken away, but I'll feel safe, or I've internalized my safety. There is no such thing as security in the world other than my ability to navigate my own ship, which is pretty much what the Pirates of the Caribbean movie was really about in a metaphorical sense. And so do you have that? And do you navigate this world according to your own law, even though you need to participate on some sense within the greater cosmology? So it's a dilemma that we face, and that Mercury square the nodes is going to literally ping pong us between the two belief systems that you will see. Okay, so that's going to be that. Now, with that being said, I'd like to jump onto my also favorite part of doing these videos, and that is more of the kind of abstract, non-linear, emotional dynamics that we can pick up from it. Now, I feel pretty clear on what the astrology is telling us, and most of the message has already been outlaid for us over there. But here's an image that I feel we are, especially for those of you that are living in America at the moment, are becoming familiar with, not the actual church itself, but a lot of the parts of where there are protests, where there are attempts to bring the voice to the public around where there has been, displaced emotion. And there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of mess. And this picture also speaks to a tremendous amount of, as I said before, the old system that once housed our reality, that once housed our safety, that ecosystem, that structure no longer holds that anymore. It is not a safe space. And it does look like that. It is abandoned. It is emotionally abandoned. It was never emotionally rich to begin with. It was just a shell. And that shell was a system that held belief systems. And here's the reason why I love this picture so much. Here's the instructions. So what do you mean, Simon? What do you mean instructions? Well, South Node in Jupiter, North Node in Gemini, okay? And then you got this Neptune in Pisces energy that's sitting there. And it's like, from this point, if you're standing at this picture and you are getting into the feeling of standing behind this podium, that's why I love this picture so much, because it gives you the power of being behind your own script, your own autobiography. Okay, so who's writing your autobiography? Are you letting it be written for you, or are you writing it? Which myth are you living? Are you living your personal myth and your personal story, or are you living the scripture? Are you living the information that of the priest or the person, the big man that's standing over here, telling you who's sitting over there, receiving it? Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Are you in charge? Are you the adult of your life? Or are you asking the person here to save you? Virgo Pisces. For those of you that know evolutionary astrology will know that evolutionary astrology looks at the Virgo Pisces axis as the archetypes associated with religion. Of course, you have this natural connection between Sagittarius and Gemini. And so beliefs, Sag, communication of those beliefs, Gemini, relative to the illusion, Neptune, and the service to that illusion, Virgo. Okay? So are you in service to the ideology, to the perspective, to the truth that is being broadcast to you? Or are you in service to your own faith and your own truth and your own personal myth? Very intense question. Now, the only way to be able to have the latter is if you internalize your sense of safety, security, and you govern that. So when you go out in the world, do you say, yes, this is the truth I must accept, whether it be the right or the left? Or is it the truth and your scripture and your direct experience? So who's behind the podium? You or the person telling you what to do? Ironically, I'm in that kind of position right now, so I'm sorry, but at the same time, you get what I'm really trying to say. So that's one part of this picture that I wanted to put across, right? So where's the message coming from, right? What's the impressions of your life? How do you validate your own experience? And then, do you have the safety to deny that faith, truth perspective? Do you say, no, that's not my truth, that is a truth that is given to all of us to succumb to? Or is it, do you deny that truth? Do you say, no, I am better to be alone than, and I don't mean alone as in alone, but I mean as in I follow and commit to my own truth and follow my own navigation? Do you have that safety in you? If the answer is no, then this energy over here between now and the end of the year is giving us all of the potential to look at all of the parts of ourselves where this occurs. Okay. All right. So we know that there is a movement, an ideology, a perspective of oneness. Okay. And we want to come back to oneness. And one of the issues with coming back to oneness is when we're growing up, okay, because Venus is going to go through Leo. And when it goes through Leo, it's going to make inconjuncts to Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter. And what that Venus in Leo is going to do is going to say, have you internalized your security or not? And you know how that will look like? If you haven't, it will look like asking other people, governments, and other forms of authorities to make your life more safe. Okay? And what do you mean, make my life look more safe? Well, when the child, okay, this is the Leo part, when we are children, and we are coming out the womb, we do not have any form of safety. We don't know what that safety is, how to identify it. So naturally speaking, we instinctually move to the mother's womb, the breasts, and the mother becomes a connection to us for a period of time. Eventually, over a period of time, we start to notice that there are patterns of people consistently showing up in our life between the ages 0 and 2 that will give us a sense of safety relative to their behavior. A lot of people, unfortunately, suffer from that abandonment. And so we're stuck in that abandonment. We're stuck in needing to be seen, validated by other people in our life. And we're consistently putting our security in the other person and saying, save me, save me, save me, validate me, validate me, validate me, see me, see me, see me. And all you're doing is you're saying, that person, I'm giving you full control to tell me if I'm going to be emotionally regulated or not. I.e., that if I get the person to say the things that I need them to say in order to make me feel safe, then I'm safe, then I'm good, then I'm okay, right? Right. But what I'm really saying is I'm not seen and I don't feel safe and I don't know how to internalize that safety. So therefore you need to do it for me. And you see where this is going: control, manipulation. So Pluto Libras, all of you right now that are recovering from growing up in a home where you've experienced emotional abuse, emotional abandonment, emotional loss, you are recovering from the absence of this. And so this leads you into people-pleasing syndrome, and it leads you into codependency. And if there's anything that you can take away from this video today, is to heal your codependency. Heal your codependency. Why heal your codependency? Because as it stands at this point in time, in this structure, the rules, the machine, the system, all established from a need to meet the other person's emotional nature over your own. And when you were taught, when you said, no, I don't want to do this, or you didn't feel like it was right, you had guilt. Why did you have guilt? Because the man standing behind on the scripture over here and the podium in your super ego says, you are a bad person if you don't look after that person. So sacrifice your needs, put away yourself, take care of the other, look after the other. And so what happens is that instead of you actually saying, you know what, this is correct for me, you go, nope, I can't say no to the other person because firstly, I don't want them to get dysregulated. Secondly, I don't want them to get upset with me. Third, I don't like feeling guilty. Four, I don't and have not had the tools to be able to internalize my emotions. So I'm really afraid of the emotional reaction. And so then we just consistently keep saving other people, Pisces, saviors, and then we become the victim, and we need to play that card. And this is complex post-traumatic stress. So what you need to do is you need to go to the description at the bottom, see Pete Walker's book, and get it, heal your codependency, heal your nervous system's reactions to your early childhood, so that you can actually come out of these states and come out of the destruction and the abandonment and the decay that has occurred in an old system that was emotionally void. And so in coming back to my point over here, when the child does not have these things met, there is no separation. We're all in Pisces land when we're children. So everything is one. Until eventually, at some point, we start to experience the world, generally when you're Saturn square, that the world is not a safe place, that there's some danger things here, you could get hurt. And so your image of reality as all one and loving and nirvana like state starts to become a little bit like affected, as in you experience a shock, you realize your immortality, and this starts to crack the sense of safety, right? So when we grow up, you can be 48 years old chronologically, but emotionally you could be trapped in your 15-year-old state. And so what I'm saying here in this video and in the astrology is that when you get to the Aquarius part, you will either be stuck in the trauma, Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter in Aquarius, and you will be in a reality in which you will trade your security, your authenticity for security, because you need that sense of safety, because it needs to be externalized, because you're still in this childlike fantasy state, the inversion. Yeah, you're not grown up. You're in Peter Pan land, never land. You know, we're still in the fantasy. And when we're in the fantasy, we're stuck wanting any and every experience to not hurt us because it's not safe, and we don't know how to internalize our safety, and we don't have any boundaries to say, I won't let this happen to me. So when something negative happens to us, instead of saying, I won't let this happen to me, or I won't stand for this, you say, please don't do that. Please don't say that to me, versus I won't let that happen. And then you walk out, or you don't allow yourself to be exposed to it because you've internalized your security, and you've denied the truth of the other person's need or want, whatever that might be. You don't know. They could be using their needs to be seen through a victim mentality, through a manipulative way. And this is how this is occurring at a more bigger, grander scale. Get shocked, you put into a state of fear, and then you respond through agreeing. So this is the destruction. This is the actual reality. It is not the pink roses and the wonderful thing. This is the reality. And when we see this reality and we come back to healing our emotional reality from this mess, and we start cleaning it up in ourselves, Virgo, then we can start speaking from our own constitution. And that looks like affirming healthy boundaries. How do you recover your healthy boundaries? You look at Pete Walker's book, you look at Peter Levine's work, you start healing your post-traumatic stress, your CPTSD. You start acknowledging that you are still angry with your mom. That gets placed into other experiences. You're angry because you need to let out those feelings and express those feelings, where you weren't seen with your dad. You weren't safe, and so you've made choices in your life where you felt guilty, but really that guilt is just misplaced anger that is rooted in abandonment. And how do you forgive yourself for that? How do you turn to yourself and say, hey, my unmet need as a child has influenced me as an adult? And instead of looking at that unmet child with anger and like, oh, I'm so pissed off with myself because, turn to that and say, hey, okay, I can see that right now in that moment you never had that support. And that's affected you for a long period of time. It's affected us for a long period of time. And it's no longer that you need this coping mechanism anymore. You talk to those parts of yourself. You know how many times I'm going to reinforce this, guys? Because between now and the end of the year, in order to individuate, when Saturn and Jupiter hit Aquarius and you get faced with a choice, are you in the system and you give up your civil liberties for safety, or you're out of the system and you're following your own authority? Which one do you choose? And that's the question. And I close with this today. Okay. Thanks very much for letting me speak to you guys today. I really hope that you got a lot of value out of this. Don't forget Instagram. Don't forget our Patreon page as well. By the way, actually, I wanted to say, because of the Patreon page being there and letting you know about it, I am going to start putting a lot of content there to help people process their Saturn material. And so there is a Saturn course that I have on my website that is specifically dedicated to processing this material, how it works in your own chart, how it's worked in your family's chart, so that when you actually begin to come to Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter in Aquarius, we individuate and you can navigate your own ship. And I'll be supporting a lot of people on Patreon around that process. So if you want to jump into something and process something like that, Patreon is the place to be. Okay, peeps, have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.